Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about writing pseudocode here. So basically we're inside of a C document. Now we're going to want to use the pseudocode to help us to write the actual code. For that reason, we want to be in our actual C file in our editor while we're writing it. So here we are in our editor, writing our pseudocode. Like the excellent programmers that we are. Attentive to every detail. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our comment. So the pseudocode has to be in comments or it will interfere with the C code, right? So we're going to do /*. We're going to hit enter a couple times, then */, all right? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to write a summary of the program that we're going to write. Okay, so this is a way for us, like our overall, what is the program going to do? Okay, so summary. All right, so we're going to write the program is going to ask the user how many dogs they would like to own. The program is then going to respond with a statement about, oops, it doesn't, this may or may not line wrap here, so we're just going to hit enter. Respond with a statement about what type of dog the user should purchase. Okay. All right, so that is the summary of the program, okay? All right, so now we're going to go ahead, so we wrote the summary, and now we're going to go ahead and write the pseudocode, okay? So we're going to write pseudocode, okay? Now, in general, what we should do is we should do a start the program, and we're going to have a name. Start, and then we're going to call it choosedog. Okay, choosedog.c. Could even call it that, choosedog.c. Okay, and then we know that we're going to have an end. Okay, we know those two things about every program, right? Start and end. In general, we're going to put a semicolon after each line. It's not necessary though. Remember, pseudocode is really, like, there aren't a lot of rules. It's supposed to be just English, right? Okay, so in my case, I'm going to go ahead and leave off the semicolons, all right? Okay, so we have a summary of what the program should do. So the things that we're going to get is we're going to do sequencing, right? We're going to do selection, like if statements, and we're going to make it repeat. Right, so it's going to be repetition, right? So those are like loops. Okay, so that's the type of things that we can do inside pseudocode, right? All right, so in this case, we're going to, the program is going to ask the user, I have lots of typos usually, I have to watch those. So we're going to go ahead and ask the user what type of dog would they like to own, okay? So we're going to put print what kind of dog, oh sorry, how many dogs do they want? How many dogs do you want? Okay, so we're going to print that. Then we are going to get user input, so we're going to get input from user. Okay, now we could even say what type of variable we want. Okay, so as we move on with pseudocode, we would want to think like, well, how are we going to store it? Okay, you don't really have to add that initially, but saying get input from user, that's enough to say, hey, we know we need a variable to store that input. Okay, so we just know that. We could also say get number from user, okay? That would specify the type of input. get input as number from user. Okay. Okay. After we know, so now we know how many dogs they want. Okay. Now we'd want some kind of an if statement, right? So if, we might just put if, right? If the number of dogs is, now here you can write out less or greater than. In this case, I'm going to use the greater than symbol. Is all right, I'm going to say less than 1, less than 2, and then we can just tab in. If we want to show that something is inside of a code block, we can just like tab in just to show it's inside, rather than using the parentheses. We could also do if-then statements. So if the number of dogs is less than 2, then, and we can just continue on with the statement, right? So we don't even have to do a line break. We can just do then, if the number of dogs is less than 2, then print you should purchase a I'm going to totally misspell that. Let's say German Shepherd. You should purchase a German Shepherd. Okay, there's our recommendation, right? Okay, probably a better way to do this is to put it on a separate line. So we'd hit enter. Okay, so there's our if-then statement. Okay. And then we hit enter again, and we might just put another if. Notice I'm not doing else's or default or anything like that. We could put an else at the end if we wanted to, but we're not doing like else if. So we could put if the number of dogs is greater than 2, but less than 3. And if you're fuzzy on the symbols, we can just use words. Greater than 2, but less than 3. Greater than 2, let's put less than 5. You can put then print. We could use output instead of print as well if we wanted. Then output. We can also say print to screen. We could say that as well. You should purchase a dachshund. I don't know if that's the correct spelling. It's going to be so far off. I'm going to say poodle because I know how to spell that. Poodle. You should purchase a poodle. Okay. And then finally, if the number of dogs is any number greater than 5, then print to screen you should buy a toy Pomeranian. Okay. All right, so there's our if statements. If you want to do some kind of default, if input is anything else, if input is anything else, then go back to line 9 and ask again. Okay. In this case, though, we could go. Say we want multiple lines on this if statement. We can go if anything else, then we can put the then on the same line, right? Which is probably better, to be honest. So you can put the thens on the same line. Okay. Sorry, that was my mistake. We can say go back to line 9 and ask again. We can also print out, we can say print to screen. Please make a different, please, actually we could say please give a number between 1 and 5. So we can give them a little bit more guidance. Okay, so let's take a look at, and then we say go back to line 9 and ask again. Okay, now obviously right here, so this go back to line 9, that's a loop, right? But in our pseudocode, we don't really need to think about that, all right? Not yet anyways, okay? So what we might do is this might be version 1 of our pseudocode, right? So it's just kind of us getting it down on paper. You know, then we'll go back and we might at some later date, okay, we might actually go back and edit the pseudocode. So pseudocode is not like, you know, is meant to be worked with, right? So we might say, oh, we have this loop, like go back to line 9 and ask again. Well, that's kind of like, that should really be in a loop, right? So we might go ahead and just tab over. And we might say loop while user has not been given advice. Okay, so we might say that loop while user has not been given advice. Okay, and then after each one, so once we give advice, we might say, okay, we want to break out of loop. Okay, something like that. So once we give advice, we say, okay, we want to end the loop right there. All right. Okay, but for our initial take though, we don't really need to provide that kind of like looping logic, right? You know, we can just have basically our if statements. If we want to have a loop, you can just include it in there. Say, okay, we want to go back to line 9 in this case and loop back around, right? We don't have to include the whole loop structure like that. All right. Now, guys, you notice why I was doing this. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, well the then should go on this line, but we could really just put it back up here. That's because pseudocode, there are really no like rules, and that's one of the reasons why it is kind of hard to learn, right? Because in coding, we're used to having a lot of different rules, and with pseudocode, there just aren't a lot of rules. So go ahead and do your best. Now okay, so good luck with that.